What is up, guys? Misha here from Beyond the Huddle, and welcome to this week's altcoin forecast. As you guys saw yesterday, Ralphie did the Bitcoin forecast, so we'll kind of review what happened on Bitcoin, and then we'll go over the altcoin market as a whole, and then we'll look at some specific altcoins. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. Alright, guys, we are now looking at the Bitcoin price, and as you guys know from yesterday, when Ralphie did the Bitcoin forecast, we have the new indicator, which is our SMI, the smart money indicator that shows us accumulation and distribution in the spot market. And this was telling us that there was heavy accumulation happening on Bitcoin. So now the second thing that we know is that looking at the commitment of traders report, we know that the asset managers are extremely net long. They've added longs, although they've added some shorts as well, but they are about 89% long. Okay, so everything outside of the chart, the backdrop outside of the chart, is telling us that we should be looking for buying opportunities. But that's where the beauty of using the charts to time your entries comes in, because if we did not look at the charts, we'd be thinking, oh, we should be buyers, we would have been buying and would be in drawdown. But because we look at the charts and we have our levels, which, for example, right here, we have our weekly level and our monthly level right here, we can see that we've been below the monthly level this entire time. So that's why being below the monthly level is telling us that we should now be buyers. And also now we're below the weekly level. Now we are trying to make our way back above this weekly level, and once we do, then we would have a chart confirmation of our quote-unquote fundamental bias that we got from the accumulation distribution indicator and the commitment of traders report that are telling us that we should be bullish. Now once we get the chart confirmation, then everything lines up, and then we can start looking for entries to continue in line with the uptrend. So right now, we need Bitcoin to go back above this weekly level right here, and then it will also go above the daily open, and then we can start targeting the weekly open and then potentially the monthly open. But until we go back above this level, Bitcoin would not be bullish from a chart perspective, but from a fundamental perspective, looking at the COT and the accumulation distribution, this is definitely bullish. So we're keeping an eye on this level right here. We kind of used it as resistance earlier, but now we are about to challenge it again. If we're not able to challenge it, we're going to be going lower, and we'll have to look for other opportunities to find an entry. But if we do go above that, then we're going to start looking for entries. Okay, so now that we understand that, what the backdrop for Bitcoin is, and now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the altcoin market. All right, so right now we are looking at the total market cap, and we're also looking at the altcoin/Bitcoin index here. And looking at the total market cap, you guys can see that this year has been totally bullish. Now, could we potentially be seeing the end of year retracement? Absolutely, that could potentially be happening. We drop down into a quarterly time frame. You guys can see we have this massive wick to the upside right here on the quarter, and then now once we start going down into a monthly, you guys can see that we are now using the quarterly open as support. So this quarter we went up, made a high, came down using this level as support. And if we drop down into a weekly time frame, you can see there was a weekly demand sitting right there. Now, ever since we bounced off of this level, we've kind of been consolidating between the range of that big bearish weekly candle. Now we drop down into a daily time frame. You guys can see that today we're starting to see a push back higher. Now here's the key with this specific chart right here. This is all going to be dependent on how Bitcoin reacts around its weekly level, right? So as I mentioned in the previous segment, if Bitcoin's it's able to go back above its weekly level, then we can expect the total market cap as a whole to start gaining momentum to the upside. Now we obviously have the weekly open right here. That would be an important level that we would have to go back above. But if Bitcoin is not able to go back above its weekly level, then what we would expect is for this area right here with the weekly open to stay as resistance if we ever go back up there, and then we would see this start to make its way lower towards back towards this quarterly open and these demand areas right here. So that's kind of what I'm seeing on the total market cap. Again, it's all about what Bitcoin does above, whether Bitcoin is able to go above its weekly level. Now, looking at the altcoin versus Bitcoin right here, from the last time we mentioned how we wanted to see prices stay above this area right here. So we're right inside that area that I was talking about in the last video, and we're also right above this daily demand right here. Now, let's go back and look at the split screen view again, because what I'm seeing here is if this is going to start to go higher, right? If Bitcoin's going to go back above its weekly level and the total market cap starts to go higher, it's going to be very, very important to see what happens here, because if we hold this quarterly open and this daily demand right here, then this means that we should be in on altcoins, because then we would expect this to start to expand back to the upside, go back above monthly and weekly opens and start expanding to the upside. However, if this starts to rally, but we are unable to hold this quarterly open with this daily demand right here, that means that altcoins would start underperforming Bitcoin and that you would want to be in on alt instead of BTC. So how we react around this quarterly open is going to be very important, but more importantly, what happens with this index right here is going to be even more important, because if this index starts to go lower and we hold this quarterly open and daily demand here, what that's telling us is that although the market is going down, Bitcoin is going to drop harder than alts. But if this starts to go lower and then this also gives the quarterly open gives way on here, then that means that not only is the entire market's going to go lower, but alts are going to bleed even more than Bitcoin. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. So definitely a very, very important area between this daily demand and this quarterly open. And we're sitting right on it right now. So that's what I'm seeing for the overall market. Now, obviously, because we are bouncing off of this level right here, we're going to assume that we are going to see a continued bounce and potentially go back above the monthly and the weekly, and then we'll take a look at some of our altcoins, including Ethereum and Zcash. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. All right, guys, we are now looking at the Ethereum BTC price chart, and as you guys remember from last week, we were getting very, very close to our target right here, and unfortunately, we have not been able to hit that target. We got very, very, very close, and now we're starting to see a retracement. So throughout this whole entire down leg right here on Ethereum BTC, what this is telling us is that Bitcoin is outperforming Ethereum. Ethereum is currently underperforming compared to Bitcoin. But we had mentioned how we wanted to see price hold this area right here. So if I draw a box on this area right there, make it yellow right here. So right there. And we look at this, what we have is the monthly open, and we have this daily demand area right here. And we're currently sitting right on this area. So we want to see price hold this area. If price doesn't hold this area, then we're probably going to see a drop down into this daily demand, or even potentially this level right here, which when we look at it on a higher time frame, that ends up being a weekly demand down here. So those would be the two levels that I will be looking at. And then from those levels, then you would expect another price leg higher. Now, obviously, if we are not able to hold these levels, then we're probably going to see price go all the way down into a deeper discount of this entire range. Then that's when I would be pulling my fibs from this low into this high, and I would be looking at price potentially coming down into this area right here. So that's what I would be seeing, looking at for the downside. For the upside, obviously, you guys already have the target. That's this level right here. So it's all going to be depending on how we revolve around these areas that I just mentioned. Right now, we're using the daily open as resistance, which is not a good sign. So if we're going to see a reversal from the area that we're in right now, which when we go back to the daily, so you guys can see this, we have this daily demand, this demand area, and then we have the monthly. So if we're going to see a reversal from this area, we need to see price go back above this daily open. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. That's this green line right here. If we're unable to go back above that, then it's probably going to take at least another day before we see a reversal, or that also could mean that we're going to keep rolling over to the downside. So again, nothing looks too bullish here until we go back above this daily open. So until then, we would expect Ethereum to continue to underperform Bitcoin. But once you go back above that, then we can start to see potentially price start to make higher lows and start to potentially go back and challenge this weekly open right here. But until this daily open gets broken, that's not what we should be seeing. So that's pretty much what I'm seeing on ETHBTC. Again, potential downside targets, we have this level right here and then that level right here, and then the overall upside target is right there. So now let's go ahead and check out what ETHUSD looks like. All right, guys, we're now looking at Ethereum USD. And if you guys remember, we had a couple levels that we've been looking at from last week. We had this daily demand right here that had been used here, and then use here again, but we finally broke down below that. But we have not been able to go below this important daily demand right here, which we had actually tapped on this big down wick right here. So we're pretty much stuck between this daily demand and this daily supply right here. And if we look at the opens, how we're revolving around the opens, we're below the monthly, we're below the weekly, but now we are starting to see a bullish day. So we're starting to see prices be able to go back above the daily open. So if we're able to go back above this daily open, just like on the Ethereum BTC chart, then we can potentially start to see Ethereum USD making higher lows and potentially challenging this weekly open right here. So right now, it's the key is going to be, are we going to be able to break this weekly open? Because if Bitcoin is headed to the downside, then that's very unlikely that this is going to happen, even if Ethereum BTC is going higher. But if Bitcoin is able to break its weekly level and start to make higher lows, then we can potentially expect Ethereum USD to go back above this weekly open right here. Now, when we look at it maybe on a 4-hour time frame, maybe even on an 8-hour time frame, you guys can see we have a nice little 8-hour supply right here, right next to the weekly open. So that's going to be interesting how we revolve around that level. So you guys can see right now, we're breaking the daily open. If we can close above that, maybe use it as support, and then go ahead and challenge this little area, that's going to be key for Ethereum, because if we're not able to break this area, then we're going to roll over back to the downside. But if we're able to break that, then we can come back and re-challenge this daily supply that we had rejected off of, and then potentially even go up to our target number 2, which is 5,500. Now, if this doesn't happen and we break this level, then we would be looking at a move back towards this quarterly open right here. And then we also had these two daily candle right here forming a daily demand. So that's what I will be looking at on Ethereum. Again, it's all going to be dependent on what Bitcoin's doing, as always. And it's also going to be dependent on how we revolve around this area right here, which has, let's see, there you go, which has the weekly open and this 8-hour supply right there. So with that said, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at our second alt for the day. All right, guys, we are now looking at our second altcoin, which is ZEC. And right now what we're seeing on ZEC is we had mentioned how we wanted to see price either bounce off of this area right here or come down into this area and see a bounce. Now, this area right here is our 3-day demand. So if we go to a 3-day time frame, you guys can see that that's our 3-day demand, which is a pretty large area right here. But we had marked out the open. Now going back into the daily, you guys can see how we tried to bounce off of this level right here. And if I go back into the weekly and I mark out what the weekly open was last week right here, I go back into the daily, you guys can see that. So this is last week's weekly open, right? Because this one is only showing me the current week's open. And you guys can see that after we had bounced off of this area that I had mentioned, we saw price come up, reject off of that weekly open, and then make its way back down, reuse this area as resistance, and then now we are down into our level right there, 3-day demand. So that's the important level for now. Now let's get rid of this level right here. Now we understand that we're below the monthly open and we're also below the weekly open. So once we hit this 3-day demand, what do we need to see? Well, we need to start to see prices break above daily opens on the lower time frames. And as you guys can see right here, we are right above this daily open right there. So now, what do we need to see in order for ZEC to start going higher and potentially outperform Bitcoin? Is we need to sustain above this daily open, use it as support, and then start to make higher lows on the daily time frame. We want to start seeing those days make higher lows and make their ways towards this weekly open right here. But again, guys, if this happens, right, if this happens and Bitcoin is headed to the downside, that still does not make ZEC a great buy. What would make ZEC a great buy is if Bitcoin goes above its weekly level and then we see this happen, then we know that ZEC is going to be outperforming Bitcoin on the way up. Because if this happens and Bitcoin is, and what I mean by this happens, if this starts to go higher, aka ZECBTC, but then Bitcoin is headed to the downside, well, all this is telling us is that ZEC is going to drop less than Bitcoin, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for coins that will rise more than Bitcoin, not just drop less than Bitcoin. So it's very, very important to always know what's going on with Bitcoin and then go into the alts with that idea in mind. So with that said, guys, we are at the level right here. Now, there isn't much else to say about the ZEC price chart. This is a pretty big range. So if we mark out this entire range right here like this, that's a pretty big range. But right now we're starting to see a bounce off of it, which is pretty nice. And then we're going to have to monitor and see how prices react throughout the day and the rest of the week. But if we're not able to go back above this daily open, you guys can see we're struggling above that daily open. If that does not happen, then we're going to go deeper into this area right here. And then we would have to start looking for other price action signals in there before we can potentially see a move to the upside. So with that being said, guys, that was the altcoin forecast for this week. I hope you guys got some value from this video. If you did, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you can get notified every single time we drop a new video. And then keep an eye out for when we reopen the BTH Premium so that you guys can get access to our smart money indicator if you want to be able to see when there is accumulation versus distribution in the market. So with that said, guys, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.